So as I have mentioned, we have been missionaries with Gospel Fellowship Association Missions for about 17 years, since 2005. And the Lord has led us to be a part of a team at a Bible college in Manila, or specifically Quezon City, Philippines, basically in the Metro Manila, or the capital region, national capital region of the Philippines. We've been in the Bible college there called the Bob Jones Memorial Bible College, and we've been there really since 2005. I was actually there for a couple years before that, before I was married. So over the 17 years, a few weeks ago, I took some time just to think through what are some of the things that we've been able to do. You probably understand that you tend to just live day by day, and you sometimes don't really feel like you have done much. You just kind of do what's your duty to do that day. But if you look back and you kind of look at what the Lord has done, you really do see His hand, and His hand using you. And so if I were to connect this to the missions conference theme, I would say that what I did in Sunday school was something like, your missions program is for such a time as this. And I would say that the Sunday morning message was that you or we are here for such a time as this. And I would say that this would be more like, I am here for such a time as this. And so this is a little personal. And so I'm just sharing what I have done, or we have done. And I hope you understand that all of this are labors for the Lord's commendation. And ultimately, He will sort out what was done for Him and what sort of work it is. And I hope some of it will survive His searching fire. So just some things that we have been a part of, and it's been a joy. I wouldn't really trade anything in the world for the opportunities we've had. We've been in about 15 countries over the last 17 years. Some of those, of course, the Philippines, Hong Kong, Malaysia, South Korea, Singapore, Bangladesh, United Arab Emirates, Myanmar. One thing I think is neat is that we have taught every year at the Bible college. In other words, we've never furloughed in a way where we missed a year. And even during COVID, we've been able to teach virtually, and really everything was shut down. But we've always took a furlough in such a way that we were back for at least a part of the college year. I was trying to think back as to about how many students maybe I would have taught over in some way in those 17 years. And I would estimate that at maybe around 500 students, undergraduate students on site in the Bible college there. Also, beyond that, we have a program for training pastors called Continuing Education for Pastors. And this is where we go out to the province. We partner with a church and a pastor. And I, or a teacher, will fly out to this church, and then the pastors will come to that church, and we all just stay there for about a week. And it's a great time of fellowship. We'll have anywhere from 10 to 15 to 30, sometimes 40 pastors that'll come out for this week. And some places where we've been, they just sleep in the church. They'll sleep on the pews. They'll sleep on the floor. They usually give me a bed. They have mercy on me. And they'll give me a bed because I'm a weak, puny American, and I don't sleep well on the floor. And we just all gather, and really it's just a great time with these men who come from all kinds of situations, and some of them really serving the Lord and serving on very little and really living by faith. So I would estimate about maybe 150 pastors have in some way attended some of these classes. In addition, has been opportunities to teach and preach, or focusing on teaching here, to pastors and church workers from other countries beyond just the Philippines. I would estimate around 60 from or connected in some way to mainland China. This is partly being done in Hong Kong, being done on, at least in years past, on an island in the Pacific where they would fly in some of these mainland Chinese pastors for training. A neat story. This is before my time. To give you an idea, this is, again, before I taught there a couple times, but the original batch of these mainland pastors that they brought out of China, many of these men had prison records, criminal records, because of their preaching ministry. And so as these men gathered in the airport in China, I forget if it was Shanghai or Beijing, but as they gathered there in that airport, they began to wonder among themselves, how are we going to get through immigration? I mean, we're all coming out together, and they're going to look at our passports, and we're going to come up in the system. And so they're headed toward immigration, and the electricity in the airport went out. And so they got to immigration, and they just shuttled them through so they could make their flight, and they just let out all these criminals. And were able to get on the plane and get to to these teaching locations. So there's just some neat things that have happened with that. I'd estimate around 30 or so, really probably more than that, from Bangladesh years ago, connected with a missionary there, was burdened to provide more training for the pastors and church workers connected with his group. I worked with him. I set up a curriculum, an idea of classes to be offered, helped coordinate getting teachers over there into that country. Was there a number of times myself in Bangladesh, teaching, being with these men. Worked to see the first group graduate, was there when the first group graduated and finished. Neat, one of those that we trained, actually this man came to the Philippines and did his training, but his, I think it was his great-grandfather, was baptized by William Carey, if you know anything about missions. And so the work of William Carey lives on. Was in Korea, taught a class, I think about 10 people there, another 10 or more in Myanmar. One of our students who came to the Philippines went back to Myanmar and had a part in being there in Myanmar. And then also being in UAE, teaching some Filipinos who were working overseas, some Christian Filipinos, trying to encourage them to be a witness for Christ. Was in a service there. We had people from all different nationalities, languages, religions that would attend the services there. I'll tell you a neat story about Myanmar. I have had a burden for Myanmar for a number of years. Myanmar is called Burma years ago. And I remember this goes back several years now, I remember one morning, I think it was a Wednesday morning, and I was in the office. There wasn't much happening that morning. And so I was praying, and what I would do sometimes is I just pray across Asia, and I would either start on the west with Pakistan and try to just pray through to Japan, or I'd go the other direction and just lift up before the Lord all the different countries in Asia and just ask God for the opportunity to have a part in these different countries. Lord, give us something to do in Japan and Korea and all these China and all these countries across there. And I remember that morning, just in a heightened way, pouring out my heart for Burma, that the Lord would give us a work to do for Burma. And we didn't have any connections, no students, nothing related to Burma. So as I remember it, I walk out of the office there. I mean, this is in the Philippines. This is, Manila, Philippines. I walk out of the office, and there's this young man there. And so I said hello, greeted him. And so he said, yes. He said, my name is Boy, with an I on the end. My name is Boy, and I'm from Burma. And I thought, well, great. And so anyway, he ends up signing up for master's classes. And he has an undergraduate, and he's taking these seminary classes. I thought, well, this is the answer to my prayer. This is great. Well, he's really hit and miss in his classes. I mean, he's there, and then he's not there, and he doesn't do his homework, and finally he just disappears. And I think, well, so much for that answer to prayer, So, years go by, and I don't even know how many years. And, one day here comes this young man in the office, and get to know him, and his name is David Leon, and he's from Myanmar. And I said, so how did you ever hear about us? Again, we're in the Philippines. He wanders in, he's from Burma. I said, how'd you hear about us? He said, I have this friend, his name is Boy. And he said, Boy told me, he said, listen, if you can get over there and you can study, he said, you got to go to this college because they believe the way we do. And I thought, this is it. And anyway, he's was really one of the best students from Burma we ever had, and just ate it up. He had been an evangelist, church, not even really a church planner. He just preached the gospel. In fact, he was embarrassed because he said, yeah, I preached the gospel. I got all these people saved. I never discipled anybody. He was just so embarrassed by it. But just a tremendous man. And then he went back to his family, and then he had me come over and be a part of what he's doing. He has stayed there. In the midst of, I don't know if you've kept up in the last year or so, but Burma has been really hard hit. COVID was an issue, of course, but then you have this police takeover and the regime cracking down. And one of our other students from Burma, remember him sharing with a class, he's like, pray for me. He said, pray for us because he says we have these times where you got to go out and it's like they're telling you what to do, and if you miss one of those you're in trouble, and so we're afraid to sleep because we might not wake up in time. And just a really intense situation. But this man has just stuck it out right there in the capital city. He's there for his people. So I would estimate, if you put all that together, I would estimate that I've taught in some way, in some form, maybe 800 to 1,000 students, church workers, and pastors over the 17 years. I was trying to estimate conservatively that maybe I've lectured about 3,000 class hours. That's a lot of talking. I don't even like to talk, really, but a lot of opportunity. I've taught all the Old Testament classes at our college. That's my background in terms of my training was primarily Old Testament. The way we do it in our Bible college is we do like sections. So like you have a class called Pentateuch. You have a class called Historical Books, and a class called Poetic Books and Prophets and so on, Major Prophets, Minor Prophets. And so I've taught all those. I've taught our 3 Hebrew classes. I've taught all 6 of our Greek classes. Our current Greek instructor was my student years ago. And really neat, he was my son's Greek instructor just a few years ago. I've taught some of the systematic theology classes, taught some of the Bible doctrines classes, taught some of the homiletics classes, class on Ephesians, words and works of Christ, Bible history and geography. Right now I'm teaching a class we're finishing up called Christian Literature, and we just finished reading Pilgrim's Progress together. I've taught parts of Christian family, methods of Bible study. I'm teaching a class right now, 2 Corinthians in Greek. We read every verse in Greek in 2 Corinthians this semester. Either I assigned it or we read it in class. Now, one of the neat things about our college there is and this goes before my time. This is a team ministry. This is not just me. This is a team of people that are here working together. And when our college was started about 37 years ago, one of the burdens was they didn't want to offer just a kind of an average, low grade education. They thought, let's give them everything we can. Let's put it up to where they got to kind of tiptoe a little bit to reach it. And it is, when I sit back and look at the curriculum, what we're offering these students, we've got, this last year had 100 plus students. What we're offering these students, here you are in a developing country. We offer 3 semesters of Hebrew. You can study Hebrew. By the time you finish, one of the classes, just undergrad, you learn how to use like a lexicon, like a dictionary. You can look up words. 2 semesters are actual Hebrew. You learn the grammar. By the time you're done with the class, you've read the book of Ruth in Hebrew. This is in the Philippines. We offer 4 semesters of undergraduate Greek and then 2 semesters of graduate Greek. So this is the 2 Corinthians in Greek class. In addition to that, we've got classes on how to do pastoral ministry. classes on congregational worship, classes on family, Christian family, how to have a Christian family. We have students, they're the first Christian in their family. They've never seen a Christian family. They don't know what a dad does or a mom does. They've never seen it. So we got a class for them. We have, again, Christian literature, talking about the great books through history, expository preaching, how to preach the Bible, how to open up to a passage and talk about what that passage says. Now, Bible history and geography, where they look at maps of the Bible lands, and they look at places that are mentioned in the Bible, and they can picture where these things took place. It's just the breadth of the classes that are offered. And as our students come out, and I had this one man who's just been a wonderful, done a great job in ministry. He said, I just took what I learned and I just put it to work. And the Lord has greatly used him. In addition to that, working with, again, on-site students there, and then this continuing education for pastors, what we call CEP, where these pastors that would come together in the province. I was the one that put together the curriculum for them, the program, organized the teachers, pastors coming to speak, getting people there, getting people out of there, so on, overseeing that. In addition to that, have had a part in Bible studies and ministering in other countries. I mentioned Myanmar, Singapore, done quite a bit of ministry in Singapore. During COVID, even have had weeks and weeks of Bible studies. There's this one Singaporean church during COVID. They had an ongoing Bible study for months, and I was a part of that for at least some of that time. Been involved in numerous evangelistic efforts. Have held Bible studies in a neighborhood park. We've got this park. There's this big, like a traffic circle called Quezon City Circle, and there's this big traffic circle, and there's this huge park in the middle of this. And for weeks, for months, had this evangelistic Bible study in there. Had a older man, he was converted from Mormonism. He would help gather up people there. We had Mormons, JWs, a local cult, charismatics, and so on that would come to this. Had a few people from Islam that came. Just opportunity after opportunity to preach the gospel in those settings. I had one man, Jehovah's Witness, had this beautiful JW Bible, if I can say it, just a cover. I mean, came to this Bible study in the morning, and he wasn't feeling well, but I didn't realize how poorly he was doing, and I just pled with him, and I finally said, listen, I said, you're trusting in an organization. And I said, what if that fails you? Man, he just wouldn't be swayed, and left the Bible study, and I guess shortly after I left, he started coughing up blood, and he died right there on the spot. It's like it was his final call. It was the last chance for that man. In addition, I've served as the chief financial officer of our college, and so agonized over hundreds of purchases and budget decisions. This is way out of my comfort zone. I don't think I do a good job at this at all. But what they know is that I don't like to spend money. And so I think that's why they put me there, because typically the answer is no. So what's your question? The answer is no. So no, you can't have money. But thankfully, God's brought some other people that have helped me out with the details, because really, I've been a failure. But the Lord has provided a multi-story building. You had a part in that. Unbelievable what God has done, and just so thankful. And so that's just some of what we've done over the years, and it's been a privilege to be a part of that. So as you can hear from this, a lot of what I've done is related to training, the field of Bible teaching, Bible training. This is what Brother Threlfall's going to be doing, investing his life there in India. And our mission board put together a video and where it emphasizes the value of training. And so I want us to watch that video. It is a privilege to have a part in the work of God. It's nothing we deserve. No one deserves to have any part. No one deserves salvation. And then to think of being able to actually be His servant and have a part in His work, for Him to count you faithful, putting you in the ministry, that is a great privilege. If I could summarize our ministry in 3 words, I would start off with the word training. And that's probably what a lot of people think of. And, oh, you're involved in a Bible college ministry on the mission field. Oh, so you're involved in training. I would say, absolutely. And maybe to zero that in a little bit would be mentoring, where we are working with people whom we are seeking to influence and direct. But I think even deeper than that is the idea of modeling, where when you think of training, you think more of the impartation of information. But what we're doing is more than just giving information. We are, through God-given relationships in a disciple-making context, we're trying to model what it means to live the Christian life. When they come to us from these other countries, we are training them to go back to their country, make disciples, start churches, go back to their churches, minister in their churches, really trying to help them go back to their countries and be disciples of Christ in their countries, with the idea of then they make disciples as well, and the work of the Great Commission goes on. As missionaries, we are very transient. We've got to view ourselves more as scaffolding, where we're there as scaffolding to help work on a building, but the day comes when you take that scaffolding down and then you put it in a different place. So training of national leadership is essential for that church to move forward. We are faced with ideologies everywhere. It is essential, I think, that we be turning out well-equipped disciples, well-equipped leaders, well-equipped Christians. They need to be able to think and to think biblically about these ideologies and issues and not run from them, but be able to confront them. And I think without being well-equipped, maybe you're effective in reaching the margins of society, but when it comes to reaching society itself or culture itself, making an impact on the kind of the core of that culture, you're not going to reach that unless you are well-equipped biblically to engage that culture. One of our graduates, his church is very missions-minded. A man from his church went to UAE. He's working in UAE. His real purpose there is to plant churches. He's got a church that he's planted. He's pastoring that church. When I was in that church, we had people from all these different nationalities that came to that church, including unsaved people came to the meetings in that church. And that is what God is doing in Asia. He is using the non-Western world to reach these Asian and Middle Eastern countries in a way that Westerners really, we as Westerners do not have those kind of open doors. Training nationals is really a kind of friendship. What you're trying to do is, okay, I'm going to tell you everything I know. I'm going to tell you about my experience in the Christian life. I'm going to open myself up to you with the idea that we are now equals in this. We're friends. We are brothers in Christ. And with the idea that I am only so long in this world, and I am only so long in your country. And the future is about you. It is not about me. And I want to tell you all I know so that you can then, move forward. You can stand on my shoulders, so to speak, just like I stand on somebody else's shoulders. And you can fly higher, you can shoot farther, you can do greater things for Christ than I ever dreamed of doing. I'd invite you to turn to John chapter 9. And I know sometimes here at the church you ask questions, right? Does anybody have any questions? Okay, good. I'm just kidding. Anybody have any questions or something from that? And again, I'm here. I'll be glad to answer some other time. But this gives you a little idea of what we've been doing, what you've had a part in, really, over the years. And we were grateful. I did want to mention that on the table there, I think there's enough for probably just about every family unit to have one of these magazines. I'd love for every family unit to grab one of these. It's got a number of stories in here and from different missionaries, and really a blessing just to hear what God is doing, has done in their lives from all different perspectives. And it gives you an insight into kind of a personal look inside missions. So John chapter 9, I want to make a statement, and I hope to repeat this statement maybe 10 or 12 times. And we'll do it different ways, maybe together at the end. But here's a statement I want us to think about, and I want to drive home. It goes like this: wherever I am, for as long as I am the light of my world. Wherever I am, for as long as I am the light of my world. Can we say that together? Wherever I am, for as long as I am the light of my world. Let's do it one more time. Wherever I am, for as long as I am the light of my world. Or I must be the light of my world. And I want us to look at the example of Jesus. And we see Jesus here in John chapter 9, a very familiar story involving the man we call the man born blind. And Jesus heals a man born blind. And I'm going to focus on some things in the first few verses. Let's just read. Let me read through verse 5 and get some of these words in our mind. And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, or Rabbi, Teacher, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. So I want us to look at a few things, how Jesus works, with the idea of looking at him as an example, and then our working like Jesus works. The first thing I want us to see from these verses is that Jesus works knowing God is at work. Jesus works knowing God is at work. Verse 3, as Jesus passes by this man who's born blind, he's blind from birth, his disciples ask this question, and Jesus responds in verse 3, it's not because this man sinned, nor his parents, but it's this, that the works of God should be made manifest in him. And what Jesus recognizes on this occasion is that an opportunity has arrived to manifest something God wants to reveal. That the works of God should be made manifest in him. God was doing something in this situation. And I mentioned the other day, nothing is random in our lives, and there's nothing random in the seeming passing by of a blind man, or the blind man being noticed and the disciples asking a question. This is, I can put it this way, this is a divine setup. This is a situation when God wanted to reveal something about himself through this man. And Jesus works knowing God is at work. Life is a platform. Life circumstances are a platform from which God is at work to reveal himself to mankind. In this case, there was something Jesus knew God would reveal about him, about Jesus. And I wonder if we are like Jesus in we work because we know God is working. That we are looking at what happens in life and we're looking at it through the grid of divine opportunity. God is doing something in this situation. And we want to be aware of that. Remember a few months ago, I had a guy come and look at our house down in Georgia, and he was a builder, and he came, was giving me a bid on something, and so we got to talking, and got to talking about, I forget exactly what, heaven and God or something, and I forget my question to him anyway, but he said something like, actually, he said, this is going to sound really strange, he said, but he said, I have this memory from before I was born, and I had this vision or dream, and like I was with God, and I forget all the details, and I was with God, and basically what he's telling me is that he really felt like he was okay because he had this vision or this dream. And then he said to me, so what do you think about that? And I said, I tell you what. I said, I would just be hesitant to bank all of my eternity on a vision or an experience like that. Because experiences, vision stuff, you're not really always sure what's happening. That's because the bottom line, when it comes to eternity, when it comes to that, bottom line is that there has to be blood that has washed away your sin. Your blood, and I think I used the word, some form of propitiation, that there has to be blood that has propitiated or appeased the wrath of God. And this guy is just looking at me. Far more than I would have thought a builder would have, taken that in. And he was like, I've never, that's really, wow. He was taken back by it. And he later texted me and he's like, I really thought about what you said. I just felt like there was a window, there was an opportunity. God was doing something in that man's life. And I just happened to be there to see that window open up a little bit and just happened to seize that moment and give that guy something to think about. And working like Jesus works, we want to be aware of what God is doing. Here Jesus is, he sees what's happening. Here's a man who's born blind. They pass by him. It piques the curiosity of his disciples, and Jesus is right on that. And he says, no, this is all about there's something God is doing. There's works of God that he wants to manifest. And then if we move on, a second thing we see about how Jesus works here is Jesus works out of a sense of necessity. And you can see in verse 4, he says, I must work the works of him that sent me. I must work. Some versions will even expand this. We must work the works of him that sent me. But you see that word must there? I must work. And Jesus works out of a sense of necessity. This is a must of moral imperative. Something I must do. This is the must that you see repeatedly in the gospel narratives. John chapter 4, verse 4, Jesus must go through Samaria. Oh, he doesn't have to go through Samaria. There's another option. In fact, there's a more popular option to go up to Samaria, go to Galilee, then right through Samaria. He doesn't have to go through Samaria, but he does have to go through Samaria, if you know what I mean. Or like Jesus says to Zacchaeus, I must stay at your house. Like as if there's no other options. Or Luke 4:43, I must preach the good news of the kingdom of God. Or even as a 12-year-old, I must be about the things of my Father. I must be. And Jesus worked out of a sense of necessity. He lived under a sense of divine compulsion. There were things he had to do. Like we might say, I have to get that oil changed in my car. I have to get my taxes done. There are things we have to do. God works through people, through instruments. We are, 1 Corinthians 3:9, we are God's workers. We are workers who belong to God. And I wonder if we work out of a sense of necessity. Is there anything in your spirit that you feel like you have to do? And you've got other options. There are other things you could do, but you just feel like this is what I have to do. I don't really have a choice. I have to do this. I wonder if there's a coworker, a neighbor, or a relative, or somebody, and you have to say something. You have to. You can't live with yourself if you don't. Jesus worked out of a sense of necessity. And if we keep reading in that verse 4, I must work the works of him that sent me. And Jesus works in submission to the one who sent him. Jesus is under orders. This is part of the incarnation. He doesn't just take on humanity. He actually submits himself to his Father. I think this is what Philippians 2 is talking about. He makes himself in the form of a servant to his Father. He's an equal. That's what Philippians 2 says. He's an equal. It's not wrong for him. He's not just in the form of God. He's actually equal with the Father. And he takes on the role of a servant. He becomes under orders. And Jesus works in submission to the one who sent him. His work is his work. This is part of his lifelong sense of urgency. Someone had sent him. That someone who had sent him had given him a work to do. Like you might work for a manager. Do you have a manager? And you're under orders. And there's a task that's been given to you, and you must fulfill that task. That's how Jesus worked, under submission. He had a job to do. He'd been ordered to do it. He'd been commanded, given it to do. You see this in others in the Bible. John the Baptist, he that sent me to baptize with water. This is what John had been sent to do. Or Paul, when he's relaying his testimony to an unruly crowd, he's talking about God had said, God said, go, for I will send you far away to the Gentiles. Paul was an apostle to the Gentiles because he was under orders. That's where he had been sent. Somebody had sent him. And Jesus reiterates this sense of duty to the one who sent him. John 4:34, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and finish his work. You ever been so busy in something God gave you to do, you weren't really hungry? You had something to do. You're completely captivated by the work you're doing. For me, it's sometimes teaching. I get in these settings with these pastors and I'm teaching, and what else is there to life? John 5:30, I seek not mine own will, but the will of him who sent me. John 6:38, I came down from heaven not to do mine own will, but the will of him that sent me. Do you have that sense that God